So Evan Rachel Wood's documentary, Phoenix Rising, premiered last night on HBO. It's directed by Amy Berg. It is, as we talked about before, it's a kind of a hit job on Marilyn Manson. It is filled with lies. It is filled with just a lot of ridiculous content. But unfortunately, I do hate to think that there will be a lot of unsophisticated viewers or viewers who are not knowledgeable about the truth of this situation, who may not even know about Marilyn Manson's lawsuit, who are going to watch this and are going to find it in some ways compelling. As a documentary, I thought that it was, and I wasn't the only one, Andrea felt the same way. I thought that it was boring in a number of ways, especially part two. And I did notice that a number of the reviews online were pointing out that part two kind of drags. But look, even despite the fact that I don't think it was a particularly well done documentary, artistically speaking, or for entertainment value, the performance that Evan Rachel Wood gave in that, and the number of accusers, and also the fact that there's a male accuser, Dan Cleary, who, yes, we all know the issues with Dan Cleary, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, and I'm even working on a video about it. But a lot of unsophisticated viewers or people who are not knowledgeable won't know, and they'll say, "Well, look, here's a guy who was Manson's assistant, and he was on tour with Manson and Evan Rachel Wood." And of course, Evan Rachel Wood in the documentary, she acts like she and Dan Cleary, were just like this. Like there was so much that he would have seen, even though he was like never around and had nothing specific to say about Evan Rachel Wood and Marilyn Manson's relationship. But we'll get to that in a moment. Anyway. I have a feeling that a number of people will watch this, will see Evan Rachel Wood's acting, and look, she did a really bad job in the interviews that she's been doing this week. As a number of us have noted, she did a terrible job on The View, for instance, and I think that's because of the lawsuit. I think Marilyn Manson's lawsuit has taken the wind out of her sails, and so she was more nervous. But the acting, I have to admit, the acting that she does in Phoenix Rising, and some of you can disagree with me, but the acting that she does in this documentary, it's really, really good. Now, I have to, and good in the sense that, she's not just, she doesn't just cry, but there's a whole range of emotion that she shows in very sort of sophisticated ways when it comes to the Marilyn Manson situation, her relationship with Manson and everything. But again, we are dealing with an actress, what I would argue is, generally speaking, a great actress. Some of you don't like to hear that, but that's just my view, okay? Unlike Amber Heard, this one actually does have a lot of talent. But we're also dealing with someone who, in her own documentary, in Phoenix Rising, they present the idea that she has a hard time distinguishing fact from fiction. In fact, as I've talked about before, one of the most astounding things to me about this documentary, and in one of the ways in which I do think they actually shoot themselves and Evan Rachel Wood in the foot, is that this documentary devotes the first, I would say, 15, 20 minutes to establishing that Evan Rachel Wood was an emotionally disturbed child and an emotionally disturbed young woman, and continues to be an emotionally disturbed person. That is not me saying that. I mean, although that's what I believe, but that is the thesis that this documentary takes great pains to set up for us. Now, the reason that they do that, as I said before, is they're trying to show that Evan Rachel Wood was very emotionally vulnerable, so that when Marilyn Manson, the older man, swooped in, that, she was putty in his hands. But I think for a lot of people who watch it, what they'll come away with is a sense that this girl was very messed up, and also her brother says in the documentary, her brother, who was there to defend her, he says that she had a very hard time, that she couldn't distinguish fact from fiction. And she talks about in the documentary how the fact that her father had these issues. I think he's probably a narcissist, but the father had these issues, and the fact that she was a child actress, and that the father had this theater, and he was always encouraging them to perform. That made her kind of unhinged. That's basically more or less what she's getting across, and what the documentary is getting across. So, what I would say is that in a way, what the documentary is doing is making a case for the fact that this is like a case study in how someone actually does develop a personality disorder and develops into the type of person that could do what she's now doing to Marilyn Manson. So Anyway, I've said that before, but that's my opinion on that, that one of the big weaknesses of the documentary is that they establish her as being crazy at the beginning. Now, will unsophisticated viewers, will they catch on to that? I hope maybe some will, but I don't know. I think what's going to get noticed more by a number of people is again, the acting, the good acting that she delivers in this. But you know, I've said this before. People should be very, very wary of believing someone simply, especially an actress, simply based on what they're emoting, because it is just not difficult. And I don't know, maybe it's a gender thing. Maybe for men it's more difficult, but generally speaking, I don't think it's difficult to fake emotion. And I think that women in particular, not all, but I think a number of women are good at that. And if someone has a basic performance ability, and Evan Rachel Wood, like I said, is a big Hollywood actress. If someone has basic performance ability, it's actually not hard to fake a range of emotions. And so let me show you. I've done this before on my channel, but in a couple other videos. But again, I just want to illustrate the fact that it is not difficult to fake emotion, and to fake emotion in a very compelling and multi-layered way. So, I've never met Marilyn Manson. I've never talked to Marilyn Manson. But this is an idea of how it could go if I decided to join Phoenix Rising and make up this documentary, and join Evan Rachel Wood and make up a story. How would that go? I was really vulnerable young girl when I met Manson. I was 18, and I thought that I knew everything, right? Like, I thought that I was so sophisticated, and I was a child actress, and I'd done all of this stuff. I'd been around the world and whatever, but I just wasn't prepared for how deep I was going to get into this. And he was just so much older. Like, I was just a kid. I look at photos of myself, and I'm like, you are a fucking baby, And to think that this 30-something-year-old man would want to date an 18-year-old kid, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, anyway, when we first started seeing each other at first, things were good. He was really nice, and sweet and supportive. And he was very good about like learning all of my interests and observing me and getting to know me and like figuring out what my weak spots were. Right. So, the first couple of months or whatever were good, but, then something just changed. And he got really cold. He got really mean. The sex started getting more violent. And I wanted to tell my family. But there's just so much shame, And I thought of myself as this like tough woman, right? And this tough girl, and I'm street smart. I know what's going on, right? Or I guess I wasn't. I guess I was really naive, but I'm sorry. You see, it's just totally easy. I'm not even feeling anything. I'm not feeling sadness. I'm not feeling, and I didn't even practice that. Like, that was completely off the cuff. Like, if you gave me a little bit of time and you allowed me to get in the right headspace for it, and I could practice a little, I could give you a way more complex performance than that, and tears and whatever, right? But what I'm trying to show you is that it's just not difficult to fake emotion, and to fake it in a way that's compelling. So let's talk about, I just want to, I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make a video where I actually, very soon, within the next few days, where I actually tick through this documentary point by point by point. I'm going to show scenes from it, which I can do now that it's aired. There's fair use policy, as long as they're less than 30 seconds, so I won't get another copyright strike like I did last time. But for right now, I just want to run through this and tell you some of the things that I noticed. And so, like I said, my glasses, they're kind of broken and jerry-rigged here, so they look weird, but anyway, I don't have my contacts right now. Esme Bianco. Okay, so Esme Bianco, she did not say a word in that documentary. Did not say a word. She was in part two. You know, part two was all about getting the multiple accusers together. So Ashley Morgan Smithline was there, Sarah McNeely was there, Ashley Walters was there, and then of course Evan Rachel Wood, Esme Bianco. Well, Esme Bianco, when these allegations first came out a year ago, Esme Bianco was like one of the main figures. I mean, she was the first one out of the gate to do an interview with The Cut, to do an interview with Good Morning America. You know, she was a big part of this. And I think that it's very interesting that she did not say a word, that she is not depicted in the documentary as saying a word. So obviously something has happened. I don't know if there's been some kind of a rift. I haven't heard anything. But there's been some kind of a rift or some kind of an issue, because you can see when you watch part two, you can see that Esme Bianco was supposed to be a big part of this documentary, because she's one of the women who's in this group when they're sitting around talking about Manson. She sits right next to Evan Rachel Wood. That's the thing too. The way that they have these ladies placed in the room, she's right next to Evan Rachel Wood. And so you see her in these shots, but she never says a word, not a single word. So something has definitely happened there where she does not, Esme Bianco decided she did not want to be in that documentary. There's no other way to explain that. And so I'm just curious about what kind of a rift there is with them. You know, she's doing her own thing, you know, suing Manson for what, $10 million? But anyway. You know, I thought that other than Evan Rachel Wood, the other women looked really uncomfortable being there, and I thought their acting was not believable. You can tell that there's only one award-winning actress in that group. You know, and I just have to be honest. I mean, I thought the accusers looked really bad. I thought they all looked really bad, and I'm not saying that looks have anything to do with credibility necessarily. Except that I think that we are seeing a number of people who life has not been kind to them or treated them well, and they're seeing this Manson thing as a kind of a last minute sort of Hail Mary pass for their careers or for their financial futures or whatever. Because based on what I saw displayed in part two of that documentary, these are, with the exception of Evan Rachel Wood, and these are all women who, like, their time in the sun, their time in the limelight, if they ever had 15 minutes, I know some of them were models and stuff, but it's over. And this, you know, even Esme didn't look good either. And again, it looked good in the sense that they look like they've been really worn out by life. They would have us believe by Marilyn Manson, but we know that's not true. You know, I thought that the FBI, the fake FBI, in part two, Evan Rachel Wood goes to visit the FBI, and there is a clearly staged scene where she is supposedly sitting in the FBI's office, in an office at the FBI headquarters, and is being questioned about her allegations. And so there's a shot of her. They have a shot of her going into an FBI building, which is clearly an FBI building, and there's a shot of her coming out of it. But in between, there's these really weird scenes where she's sitting in a kind of a nondescript looking boardroom or office, and the door is partly obscuring. It's obscuring whoever is supposedly sitting with her and anything else that's going on in the room. So all we see, we're like peering into this room, and the door is obscuring a lot of it. And so we just see Evan Rachel Wood, and we see her. All we see is her nodding, talking, grabbing her hair, I guess, to show us what Manson did to her. But it's, if you watch it, it's very, very obvious that it's a staged scene, and it's very awkward and strange looking. And also, I've been told by credible sources that the FBI does not allow people to bring cameras inside and film, particularly for, I would imagine, for salacious documentaries. So that was just a flat out staged scene. And I understand that people have to do stuff like that for documentaries at times, but come on. If one of the foundational aspects of your argument is against this man, against Marilyn Manson, is that these crimes are so serious that you had to report them to the FBI. If the FBI is going to be a pillar for you, a pillar of your documentary and of your argument, then maybe you don't want to fuck around with that and fake an FBI interrogation session. Okay, especially since you're already being accused of faking or impersonating an FBI agent. And for those of you who don't know, that's one of the main allegations in Marilyn Manson's lawsuit, is that Evan Rachel Wood and her co-conspirator Ilma Gore, they actually typed up a fake letter that they said was from the FBI, claiming to be an FBI agent, and then they signed a real FBI agent's name to it. So it wasn't just faking an FBI letter, but it was also actually impersonating an FBI agent. So, you know, if you've already done that, if you're already in trouble for that, maybe in your documentary you want to cut out the part where you're faking an FBI interview. That's just a thought. All right. Okay. And so they, you know, so much of this I thought was just, well, first of all, okay, there were some really just silly things throughout. Like, for instance, at the end of part 2, almost at the very end of the documentary, Evan Rachel Wood claims that she was visited by the spirit of her dead grandmother, and that the spirit of her dead grandmother, she caused some things around her to shake. Evan says she was standing outside on the porch and all of a sudden there was like a gust of wind or something and things started shaking. And she believes that was a message from her dead grandmother, because she at that moment had just been thinking about her dead grandma. And in her mind, talking to her dead grandma or whatever, and said, "Give me a sign if you're here." And then all of a sudden the wind blows and things start shaking. And she takes that as an affirmation that her dead grandmother is behind her on this Manson thing. So that's very interesting. You know, that's a nice sort of Hamlet-like touch, where the ghost of a deceased relative comes back and, you know, eggs you on in your seeking of vengeance for imagined crimes. Anyway, at least in Evan Rachel Wood's case. You know, and some of the other stuff, you know, the whole Jewish thing, she really laid that on thick, because of course she's trying to argue that Marilyn Manson was anti-Semitic and he drew her into this Nazi appreciation and Nazi practices and all of that, and basically tried to explain away the fact that she herself drew a Hitler mustache on herself and was pictured at a party wearing, you know, a Nazi hat and a Hitler mustache. And also was pictured, photographed off stage at a Marilyn Manson concert, enthusiastically and repetitively doing the Nazi salute. Now, I've interviewed someone on my channel who was on that tour with Manson, Evan, who was good friends with them, who even lived with them for a while. And she says that Evan was the one who was so enthusiastic about this stuff, that Manson wasn't doing the Nazi salute. Manson didn't draw a Hitler mustache on himself. No, Evan Rachel Wood was doing these things. But of course, now she has to project them onto Manson. And not only does she have to project this onto Manson, but she also wants to, you know, really emphasize in this film that she is this oppressed, you know, Jewish person who was violated by this Nazi-loving older man, you know. So anyway, so there's this scene, this really like pointless, boring scene where they're celebrating Hanukkah and they're lighting the candle with the menorah, and they're singing, you know, traditional songs and stuff. She and her son, I'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, just come on, laying it on really, really, really thick there. She claims that the music video that she was in with Marilyn Manson, Heart-Shaped Glasses, I talk about this elsewhere on my channel. She's lying about that too. She claims she was raped. He raped her on set. No, they didn't even have sex. It was simulated. He, you know, she helped to plan that. He got her the highest salary that an actress had ever made for being in a music video at that point. But what I wanted to say is she and Ilma threw a new claim onto this. They claim that her being in that documentary, that music video, Evan Rachel Wood being in Marilyn Manson's music video, was forced servitude. Because of course Ilma and Evan are trying to turn this into a big feminist activist thing. They're trying to take every aspect of this situation and make it sound insidious. So they claim, for instance, that Marilyn Manson was trafficking women, trafficking Esme Bianco, when Esme Bianco actually flew free of her own free will, flew to LA and lived with Manson and worked there. Okay, but she claims that she was trafficked. Okay, and so Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore are claiming that it was forced servitude that Evan Rachel Wood was in that music video, even though, as I said, Evan Rachel Wood, by all accounts, was very enthusiastic about it. She helped plan it, and she was paid the most that an actress had ever been paid for being in a music video up to that point. If that's forced servitude, I am willing. Okay. I've talked about this before, but so much of the argument of this film, especially part one, in part two, they finally get into some hardcore allegations that Evan Rachel Wood makes, false allegations, but some legitimate in the sense that, like, yeah, it sounds like bad stuff if it happened, which it didn't. But in part one, basically, the entire argument that Evan Rachel Wood is making in part one is that Marilyn Manson basically verbally and emotionally coerced her into being his girlfriend, and that she was too young because she was just a baby. She was just 18 years old and had no agency or anything like that. Even though it's very clear from interviews that I've done with mutual friends of theirs and personal assistants and all sorts of people, that Marilyn Manson was actually wrapped around Evan Rachel Wood's finger, and it was not abusive at all, and she was the one who was manipulative toward him. But she really leans into this new feminist understanding of age, that a woman at the age of 18 is just so intellectually and cognitively and emotionally inferior to a man of some years, that it's basically, if a 30-something-year-old man dates an 19-year-old woman, then that in and of itself is a kind of assault, because there's no way that woman could actually have any agency. Even though, hello, I remember what it's like to be 18. I was an 18-year-old woman many years ago. I, in my very early 20s, dated an older man. Look, I remember what that was like. And I knew what I was doing. And I was a very unsophisticated teenager. Evan Rachel Wood likes to talk about how she's unsophisticated, but I was way more unsophisticated, way more sheltered and naive and whatever. But I knew what was up. And I would have definitely known what was up and been able to handle myself well enough if I'd been dating Marilyn Manson. So anyway, I don't buy that. Okay. You can't be this sophisticated actress who is, who's dated Edward Norton, which I'm going to keep bringing up, and I'm going to keep hitting on that. Before she dated Manson, before she was dated Manson and all of this stuff, she dated Edward Norton when they worked together on a film, and she was a teenager. It didn't last very long, but they dated. So why is she not going after him? But my point is, she had already had dating experience. This wasn't like some virgin. And she admitted in an interview in the past that she came on to him at the party where they met at Chateau Marmont. And she talked to about how she loved the director's commentary on showgirls and stuff, being a very sexual, flirtatious and all that, which is fine, except don't then, years later, decide that you had no agency in that and that Manson psychologically manipulated you into being his girlfriend, twice. But somehow Edward Norton wasn't manipulation, I guess. Oh, she claims, the drug thing, she just keeps amping that up. Originally, when she first testified before the California Assembly, she said that she had no idea that Manson had a drug problem. She didn't name him, but no idea that this guy had a drug problem. And, got her into drugs. Well, now she's stepped it up a notch in this documentary. She's claiming that he put, against her knowledge or without her knowledge, he put meth in their drugs. And she said that she got to the point where she had scabs all over her body and she wasn't sleeping and all of that. I've talked to a couple of people who knew them at the time and were around them. She wasn't covered with scabs, but anyway, whatever. But no, it's absurd. I have interviewed multiple people who've said that of the two of them, she was the more enthusiastic drug user. And look, even Dan Cleary, who I'm going to get to in a moment, but even Dan Cleary, who is on Rachel Wood's side in this, okay? Dan Cleary even says, yeah, when I was on the scene, the common knowledge was that you were a more enthusiastic drug taker than Marilyn Manson. He even says it. He says that's what people around them knew, that she was more enthusiastic about drugs than Manson. And her response to that is, well, yeah, people just didn't understand. Like I kept trying to quit and he wouldn't let me. Oh, isn't that convenient? Okay. So you're caught in one lie basically. And so now you're going to shift it. Well, yeah, maybe I was like a really enthusiastic drug user and everything, but he wouldn't let me quit. Yeah. It's all his fault. I have to say, you know, as Yoda would say, the projection is strong in this one. Very strong. What else? Oh, you know, she keeps talking about how, oh, here's a new one. She blames Twiggy. Twiggy, if you're watching this, you have now been added to the Evan Rachel Wood blame list. Do you know what you did, Twiggy? Well, what you did is your presence, when you came back to the band, your presence with Manson encouraged his dark side to come out. Because you know what, Twiggy? He was trying to impress you by treating women like shit. Even though Manson, was actually the lead singer and the major star of this group, for some reason, Evan Rachel Wood thinks that, would have us believe that Marilyn Manson was really concerned about whether Twiggy thought he was masculine enough. And so Marilyn Manson had to get in there and beat those bitches to show Twiggy that I'm a man too. I can rape women too. You know, whatever. And someday I will try to do a video on Twiggy. He was innocent as well. He was set up by a crazy, vindictive ex-girlfriend. I already talked to a woman on my show, Lisa Lesueur, who confirmed that. If you want to go look at her interview on my channel. But anyway, Twiggy was falsely accused, and Manson was falsely accused. But now, Twiggy, you're back in the limelight because Evan Rachel Wood's dragging you back into this shit and is blaming you partially for what Manson really didn't do to her. Okay. Jamie Bell, I'm just curious, Jamie. You know, you have already had this ongoing custody dispute with Evan Rachel Wood over the child that you share with her. And you claimed in leaked court documents that Evan Rachel Wood was lying about this Marilyn Manson stuff in order to have an excuse to keep you away from your kid, because she was claiming she had to run away to Tennessee to get away from Manson. We see her in the film doing that, by the way. You know, there's like 2 or 3 moments in this film where she and Ilma get spooked and they have to run away. Okay, but we never see anybody actually pursuing them. We never see any evidence of anything. There's never any evidence provided of anything that Manson is after these people, or that Manson is even aware or gives a shit about what they're doing. You know, like it's like here they are, Ilma and Evan, and they're just like, you know, scurrying around. And they've got all their computers and their charts and all their conspiracy theory craziness and their machinations. And meanwhile, you know, poor Manson, he and his wife, you know, they're just sitting at home watching Netflix and not even aware that there's this whole conspiracy massing against them. Well, I know some people did kind of think that Evan was gearing up to do something, because she had been talking for a while about this mystery abuser. It started out as being 2 abusers and one was a bartender, but then it shifted, but whatever. So people thought eventually she would name Manson. But she waited until the right moment to name Manson as her accuser. And the right moment is when you have a full HBO crew in your home to make the most of it. So we got to see that too. We got to see her in part 2 just agonizing. Oh, do I name him? Do I not? What do you think of this text? Is this right? Oh, let me redo the text. Oh, wait. And then when she sends it, you know, the look of triumph on her face. It's posted. And then immediately when Ilma Gore comes over to hug her, she starts crying. Which, by the way, again, you can fake. I'm just so happy that it's over with. I was finally able to get the courage to name my abuser. Anyways, I am a little off my game today because normally I could actually produce fake tears for you. But so, you know, I feel a little bad that I'm not able to do that. But if I were given the amount of time and incentive that Evan Rachel Wood has had to practice, I could do a great performance. I could give her a run for her money. Oh, Marilyn Manson. Also, we can add to the list of Marilyn Manson's crimes that he was responsible for breaking up the second marriage of Evan Rachel Wood's mother. That's something that Evan Rachel Wood's mom actually says. She literally says that it was Manson's fault that her second marriage broke up. Probably wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that Evan Rachel Wood's mom probably has a lot of psychological problems of her own. You know, the apple don't fall far from the tree. What else? She keeps, hey, LASD, I'm just curious. Are you cool with the fact that Evan Rachel Wood keeps dogging you in this documentary for the fact that you're taking so long and you're not on this? In fact, she says at the end, basically, that the reason that she finally had to come forward and do this publicly is because you guys apparently were just dragging your feet. Do we have like a Keystone Cop situation here? Y'all just can't get on top of this Marilyn Manson thing, right? At least according to Evan Rachel Wood. Evan Rachel Wood may be the reason that the LASD is not moving on this the way that you have been basically begging and pressuring them to do. You even got on Instagram and called for everybody to basically to blow up the LASD and prosecutor's office phone lines, demanding that Marilyn Manson be arrested and prosecuted. I'm sure they really loved that, but I'm sure what they really love is hearing you go on TV and make them sound like they either are incompetent or they don't give a shit, and that them dragging their feet, them being these Keystone Cops or these idiot prosecutors, that's why you finally had to come forward, because you really didn't want to, but your hands were tied like these fucking cops that they won't do anything, right? They're just eating their donuts somewhere. You okay with this, LASD? I really hope you and the prosecutor's office and the FBI, if you're watching, are building a case. And Jamie Bell, I forgot to say, Jamie Bell, I forgot where I was going with that earlier, but Jamie Bell, you've been in this custody dispute with Evan Rachel Wood already. I know that you know this is bullshit, what she's doing. Are you okay with the fact that Evan Rachel Wood featured your son so prominently in this fake abuse documentary? They didn't show his face, I get it, but they showed everything else, and he was in that thing a lot. If you haven't seen it, Jamie Bell, look at part 2, because your son is in it a lot. You can't see his face, but you hear his voice, and he's in it a lot. And it's clear that Evan Rachel Wood is using him as a prop and is using him to gain sympathy. So I'm just curious, are you okay with that, Jamie Bell? Also, are you okay with the way that you're depicted in this? Evan Rachel Wood said that so she admits that when you were together, Jamie Bell, as a teenager, that she cheated on you with Manson and that she left you for Manson. And then after she was finished with Manson, that she ran back to you and you took her back. But she says in the documentary, she says that you victim blamed her. That that the major reason that your relationship didn't work out the second time after she came back to you was because you couldn't understand the trauma that she'd been through, and you, quote, victim blamed her. So I'm just curious again, Jamie Bell, are you okay with your son being in this faux abuse documentary? That, by the way, is going to draw a lot of people's attention to him. It seems like if Evan Rachel Wood were so afraid of Marilyn Manson, and if Evan Rachel Wood, as she believes that Manson has threatened her child, as she claimed that Marilyn Manson, that one of the reasons she had to flee to Tennessee is because Marilyn Manson threatened her son. So if you're so afraid of this and what might happen to your child, why are you making your child an integral part of this documentary that you know is going to piss Marilyn Manson off? To me, that's making your child a target. So, Jamie Bell, are you cool with that? And here's the thing. I don't believe that Marilyn Manson is guilty. I don't believe that Marilyn Manson wants to do anything to Evan Rachel Wood's child. But, and I don't believe that any Manson fans do either. But Evan Rachel Wood and Jamie Bell, are you comfortable with the idea? Why are you comfortable with the idea that Evan Rachel Wood would throw her son in the middle of this if you think that there are these crazed Manson fans who are out there who might come and attack you? She's using her child as a prop, and it completely invalidates the argument she's making that she's in fear. You wouldn't be doing this if you were in real fear, okay? You wouldn't be. No fear for that child. And so another thing I want to say is that little snippet of Manson, that strangely edited clip that's in part 2, where all we see is someone's boots and we hear a voice that sounds like Manson, and he's saying, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." And he's saying it actually in kind of a joking tone. It's actually, even though you included just a tiny misleading snippet of something, just like Amber Heard did with Johnny Depp and that clip, that she put out there that was edited to make him look really bad. You know, he's going around and he's Johnny Depp is like yelling, he's slamming, you know, cabinets and stuff. And it makes him look like he's got a temper problem, right? But then it turned out later on, the fuller, unedited clip came out, and it shows that Amber Heard was provoking the whole thing, and that there was nothing that Johnny Depp did that was abusive. And Amber Heard's even giggling. She's even giggling. It was a setup clip. Well, and this one had the same thing, the same type of thing in it. There's this really tiny, tiny clip where you see someone's boots walk in. It's on the camera is planted on the carpet. It's on the floor, I guess, out of the way. And then you see someone's boots walk in, and it's Manson. It might be Manson. It sounds like his voice. Who knows? We don't really know who we're looking at, right? So I'm not convinced it was Manson or his voice. And he says, he mumbles a few things and says, and then makes what sounds like a joke. I'm going to fucking kill you. And that's it. That's all we're given. Come on. I mean, it's so obvious that was some kind of a setup. I don't know all the details of that, or even if that even was even Manson. But if it was, there's clearly a lot of context missing there, you know. You know, Evan Rachel Wood, you claimed recently in your interview in The Cut that Ilma Gore is no longer a part of this operation or this situation. But I just want to, and I know why you're trying to get away from her, because she's been proven to be a hoaxer. She's got a terrible reputation. She drew you into this conspiracy that's really going to cause you a lot of problems. And now she's popping off like a crazy person on Twitter and admitting to stuff. And those are my hard drives, yes, of course. And so I know that you're trying to get away from her now. You're trying to distance yourself from her, especially since y'all have, I guess, had a fight and broken up. But she's in that documentary a lot. It is clearly the Evan and Ilma show. All right. So you two are bound together. You can't get out of that. All right. Everybody knows it. Someone else who's in the documentary a lot, and this was the final thing that I want to get to. I'm thinking about, like I said, making a video on him, but Dan Cleary. So Dan Cleary is really the star of part 2. And you have to understand that they started making this, they started on this a couple of years ago. And so, you know, a lot of people, when Dan Cleary, and Dan Cleary, by the way, he was a tech guy on the tour when Manson was with Evan Rachel Wood. He was not around them hardly at all. I've talked to multiple sources, a number of them on the record, who've said that Dan Cleary had no experience, no significant experience with Evan Rachel Wood or Marilyn Manson, and that basically he's dramatically, grossly exaggerating his proximity to them. Now later on, years later, he did become Manson's personal assistant for a little while when Manson was with his current wife, Lindsay. But Dan Cleary's big thing, he came out, you know, when the allegations came out and Evan Rachel Wood and the others alleged these things about Manson, Dan Cleary came out on Twitter and said, what Evan Rachel Wood is saying is true. Manson broke her, et cetera, et cetera. And then he went on his podcast and he made a bunch of very general claims that Evan Rachel Wood was she was in a dark place. You could see an aura of darkness around her. He says all these very general things. I already made a video on it debunking it. He says not one specific thing about anything about abuse. He has nothing to contribute to the conversation about how Manson treated Evan Rachel Wood. Right? I mean, you just go look at go listen to his podcast if you want, or go look at my video where I listened to it. But that's all he says. She was walking around in a cloud of darkness, and I heard from some people, you know, some people. Well, was it the same people who were saying that she was doing more drugs than Manson? Because you know, you can't invalidate some of what you're hearing and then validate the other. So all this gossip is going both ways. But you know, no, and I've heard from a number of other people as well who were on this tour that there was not some gossip that Manson was abusing her, and everybody knew that Manson was not abusing Evan Rachel Wood. All right, everybody could see the dynamics of that relationship and how and which side they were imbalanced on. But Dan Cleary wanted his 15 minutes of fame. He doesn't have a career anymore, really, if he ever did. I mean, I have to tell you, I have just from so many sources, off and on the record, I've heard bad things about this guy. And you can look at my interview with Leslie Lane. You know, she talks about how sleazy he and some of his compatriots were on that tour. And, you know, and anyway, but he wasn't around them. And so but some people were saying to me, well, why would he come out? What's his incentive to come out and defend Evan Rachel Wood or to attack Manson? Well, what is his incentive? His incentive is that apparently there was this huge documentary, HBO documentary in the works that he was allowed to be an integral part of. I mean, I'm telling you, part two, when you watch it, part two of this documentary, it starts off literally the first 30 seconds. It starts off with Dan Cleary, and then it just proceeds for the next 15 minutes. I would say about 70% of it is Dan Cleary. It's Evan Rachel Wood talking about how brave he is. It's and how great he is. It's them meeting up. It's them commiserating. And then throughout the rest of the documentary, Dan Cleary is the only guy who is depicted as actually participating in or speaking at this support group. There's another guy who's there briefly, Fred Sablin, what's his name? But he doesn't speak at all. That's a whole other story. But yeah, he doesn't speak in the documentary. But Dan Cleary has a starring role. I mean, I think Dan Cleary actually talks more than Ashley Morgan Smithline or Ashley Walters or Sarah McNeely, and certainly more than Esme Bianco, who doesn't say a freaking word in that documentary. So they wanted to push Dan Cleary out to us hard because they know that if there's a guy added who can say, oh, I objectively, I saw this, I saw that these women were abused. This is what Manson was like, even though he didn't see anything and he doesn't know. But people know, the director of the film, the accusers, they know you put him out there and you have him talking as this knowledgeable person who was on tour, and a male perspective, that if he validates the stuff that they're saying, that it can be powerful. I don't think he comes across well. I think he comes across as what he is, opportunistic and sleazy, but it's my opinion. It's because I know the backstory on this. But anyway, I do think that that's one of the particularly unfortunate aspects of this documentary, is that some people who don't know are going to watch it and are going to say, well, look, there's a guy and he was Manson's assistant and he was on tour and he was around them a lot. But no. So anyway, Dan Cleary, enjoy your 15 minutes of fame, because this is, I am quite sure, the most significant thing you will do with the rest of your life. Someone hires you and they trust you enough to, have you doing some technical work on their tour, their big tour, and then later, they hire you briefly as a personal assistant, and then this is what you do, is you turn around and you make up lies about them. And I'm not going to address right now what he said about Lindsay. That's bullshit too, but that'll be for a later video. But yeah, he had to get that jab in. You can't leave Manson's current wife alone, can you? I'm sorry to say current wife. It kind of makes it sound bad, but I'm just saying, because we know that Dita, he was married before, so I just want to keep things clear. But his wife, Lindsay, she is supportive of him. She's been supportive the whole time. She's been unwavering. All right. And so it's, and Manson did not abuse her, and she's not claiming that. Quite the opposite. So yeah, it's really sleazy for you to drag her into this with some half-baked story about how Manson once threatened to, kill her and put her in underground or whatever, okay? First of all, I don't believe that necessarily. Secondly, even if he did, the whole point, one of the big points I've been making is that Manson, he did have this kind of twisted sense of humor. And who knows? People say things in fights all the time, but I don't trust this guy. I don't trust him. I don't trust anything that comes out of his mouth, because I've seen the way he's been handling things. So he needs to take his 15 minutes and he needs to move on. All right. What else? Yeah. So, I think that I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna go through this. I'm going to go through this and I'm going to debunk it point by point very soon. But I wanted to get this out because I know some of you are interested in what I have to say. But yeah, Marilyn Manson is innocent. I'm going to be putting out more videos to discuss it. And as always, I appreciate your support. Like, subscribe, hit me up on PayPal, Patreon, the links below. Your support does help. And I work hard on these videos. So thank you. Bye-bye.